The only way to reach him was through his feet. Through his feet. Imagine that. The great Parker Palmer, the noted educator, speaker, and activist, and author of such best-selling works as The Courage to Teach, The Healing of the Heart of Democracy, Inner Wholeness, and Let Your Life Speak. That iconic personality of the 20th and 21st century was so depressed, he was in such a dark place, he was so far down that he could scarcely lift up out of his chair to shave or even bend down and tie his shoes. That's how far down he was. And of course, then the parade of people began to come through his home, friends and associates, and one by one they said pretty much the same thing. Gosh, Parker, why are you so depressed? It's such a beautiful day outside. Get out and smell the flowers. Or others would say, oh gosh, Parker, why are you so depressed? You've helped so many other people. Get over it. And Parker said, you know, all that procession of people only made me feel worse. And then on top of it, they made me feel guilty for being depressed in the first place. And then quite unexpectedly, a member of his church came by. An elder in our church would be a member of the vestry. An elder came by and made one request of Parker, one simple request. Do you mind if I come in once a day and massage your feet? May I come in once a day and massage your feet? And completely out of fight, Parker relented. And every day at 4 o'clock p.m., the man came in and took off Parker's shoes and his socks, and for an hour just massaged his feet, saying next to nothing. Just massaged his feet, saying nothing. Looking back, months, even years later, Parker made this admission. He said, I don't even have words. I don't even have the words to describe what happened to me, but I can tell you that the mere act of that man massaging my feet kept me connected to the human race. That singular act of massaging my feet kept me connected to the human race. He could only be reached through his feet. The story really doesn't surprise me because it's my story and it's your story too. Each person in this room, every single person in every single pew is a spiritual being. But we experience everything through our bodies, don't we? We're spiritual beings who experience everything through our bodies. That's just a fact. And so when some Yahoo begins to profess spiritual experience that's disembodied, it's just about as much good as those procession of people who came rolling through Parker's life saying, hey, snap out of it. Snap out of it. Because he could only be reached through his feet. Now, thinking about that, I want us to revisit Jesus' baptism. We've glibly kind of thought about that moment in time, but let's revisit it in reality. Think about Jesus arriving on the scene there, walking through the Judean wilderness. He gets to the banks of the River Jordan, and he sees people strewn all over the banks. And then he sees just as many people already in the water with his second cousin John. Seeing the crowd, Jesus takes off his sandals, and he begins to make his way down the bank. And at first, just the soles of his feet touched the cool water. And then he's up to his ankles, and then to his knees. And pretty soon, when he's up to his waist in river water, when he's up to his waist, John comes along and dunks him beneath the green river. And Jesus comes out of the water and he says nothing. He says not a word, but the sight of him says it all. The sight of Jesus says it all. They see Jesus, water dripping off his hair and down his neck and onto his shoulders and coming off his nose and off the ends of his ears. The sight of him says it all. And what does he say without uttering a single syllable? I'm in life with you up to my neck. I'm in this thing with you up to my neck. And my life completely touches yours. My life touches yours irrevocably, indelibly, and always will. You know, we come into this room to baptize adults and children. We've done it for well over 100 years in this very room, and no telling how many people have been baptized in this room. How many of you have been baptized here? But we do not do that as some type of rite of passage or some kind of stamp of God's approval on children or adults. No, it means far more than that. Every time we baptize, and you must baptize in public. You must be baptized unless it's an emergency in the company of God's faithful people. Why? Because the Lord Jesus is saying to you and to me, come back to the waters. Come back to the waters. Come back to the waters and know that my life will always touch yours. Always. If right now you're riding a stream of happiness and joy, Jesus says, I'm riding that wave right along with you. And if right now you're so down that you're falling in the floor and all you can do is weep, the Lord Jesus says, I'm in the hot, salty tears that are streaming down your cheeks. I'm right there. And if you've made a mess of your life, as I often do, by your decisions or your words, and you have hurt the very people God has given you to love, or you've just put yourself in a terrible situation, if you and I have done that, and we've ended up in hot water, the Lord Jesus says, I am in the roiling water with you. I am right there in the middle of it with you. My life will touch yours no matter what. There's no way you can run away from me. There's no way you can get away from my love. I am here in this with you. So come back to the waters. So we may think we're mainly baptizing these children today, but the truth is we're being called back to the riverbank, called back to know that Jesus' life touches ours. And if that's the truth, and it is, in order to truly be spiritual, and we love to pull out that word, in order to truly be spiritual, we must be willing to touch others. You know that. We must be willing to touch the other. There is no way to be a healer the way Jesus is a healer, and we're all called to be that, by kind of sending neurofeed over to somebody. You know, I'm going to will you into goodness. You know, no. You got to be willing to step out and touch the other person. And then they'll get well, just like Parker Palmer got well. Maybe you don't say a word, but you got to be willing. You know, this is brought out very powerfully by what may be the most important chapter in the New Testament, Romans 8, where Paul makes this statement. It's a revolutionary statement. He says, do you not know that the Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead now resides in you? And if God raised Jesus from the dead, will He not also give new life to your mortal bodies through the indwelling of this Spirit? Do you not know the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you? Well, if that's the case, Let's get out there and begin to touch people with His power. I know deep in my bones this is a central truth of the Christian faith. I live it all the time. Now, if anybody makes a mess of his life, it's me. And so I go off on a rant, or someone hurts me, or I've made a bad decision, and I'm just letting it loose in the household. My wife of 41 years, Kay, comes up, and she puts her arms around me, and I'm healed. Like that. Boom. Done. She doesn't have to say a word. Sometimes all she has to do is look at me, but she puts her arms around me. I'm on the way to healing. She doesn't say anything nifty. She doesn't say anything clever. She puts her arms around me. I saw it yesterday. Yesterday, Kay and I got up, and it was in the 20s, and I said, Kay, we need to walk down to the food pantry. I'm kind of worried. I'm worried that they may be having some troubles down there. And so we put on our warm clothes and walked from Rosewood down the 8 or 10 blocks down this way, and I expected to find this solemn gathering in the carriage house. We open the door, and it's like a carnival in there. It's like a carnival. Rob has gotten the group, the 20s to the 35 or so year olders, and they're all in there. They cooked up hot soup, they got coffee, they got brownies, they got cookies, they got extra warm clothes, they got toiletry kits. And what I saw, these well-educated, well-appointed young people that got everything in the world going for them, they were willing to reach out and touch people who were entirely different than they were and in tremendous need. And I watched there with Kay by my side and realized this is where the healing happens. This is where it happens. At the end, I remember, and I wrote about this in a little piece I wrote this morning, that suddenly at the end there were these men coming through who were absolutely homeless and ragged clothes and smelled bad and looked bad. And they were the same age as those people in our parish who were helping them. And I noticed that our people did not miss a beat. Why? Because they had been filled with the Spirit of God and they were healing. That's how it happens. That's how it happens. I can tell you this. 9-year-old Evan LaGrange knows what it means to heal somebody with his touch. 9-year-old Evan LaGrange. On Christmas Day, that was just a few days ago if you can remember it. Evan LaGrange was the only kid in his neighborhood who was not trying out his new bicycle or scooter. He was not taking a look at the new video game he received. He was not about to sit down for a sumptuous meal with his family. No, Evan LaGrange, all 9 years old of him, was in room 736 in the intensive care unit at Methodist Hospital. He was there because Father Eric Fenton was bringing the Holy Eucharist to celebrate with Colonel John Vonderbrugge and his family, and he wanted to be there. Eric had just done worship here, went up to Methodist to have this celebration. Everybody in the room, including Evan, knew this would be the last time John Vonderbrugge ever received his Christmas communion. Everybody knew that. There's no secret. And so they went through the service, and it had some joyous parts, but it also had some profoundly sad parts. And at the end, the adults were worried that Evan would be destroyed, that this would just be too sad for him. So his mother took him out in the hallway, and she asked Evan this question, Evan, was that too sad for you? And Evan said, Mama, that was really very sad. And she kind of resigned herself. And then he looked at her and he said, but Mama, this is the best Christmas of my life. As Evan sat there right at the feet of Colonel John Vonderbrugge. And a little child shall lead them into the deepest spiritual truth.